Hi, thank you for joining us today for our Family Emergency Preparedness presentation. My name is Mary Emmerling and I'm a nurse consultant with the Department of Public Health in the Family Health section. My experience in the world of preparedness is both personal and professional. I took my first CPR and first aid course back in the late 70s and early 80s when I saw a small child get hit by a car. I knew to keep them calm and I knew to call 911, but that was about the extent of what I knew of first aid. So I went ahead and took the CPR and first aid course, and a few years later I joined the Army and became an Army medic. During my tour of duty I became an EMT first responder and went out with paramedics on the ambulance and had a lot more experience acquired through caring for people in emergency situations. After I completed my tour of duty, I married a soldier and I spent the next 17 years as an Army wife. My husband, soldier, was gone often and we were far from family and friends, and things like the internet and cell phones were just in the early stages of development, so I was pretty much left on my own to fend for myself and my children. It was in this personal experience that I became aware of how important it is to be prepared and educated with regard to home safety and local resources. My work here at the department for the last 13 years has been diverse, and 6 years of it included work with the mobile field hospital. I participated in private, public, and military drills and exercises, and I still dabble in a little bit with things like this presentation and the Strategic National Stockpile, as well as sitting on the committee of the Children's Emergency the Children's Emergency Preparedness Committee, which is a statewide committee. So why should you prepare? This presentation was initially put together for home visitors working with families in their homes through the maternal, infant, and early childhood home visiting programs. We saw this program as an opportunity to reach families in their comfort zones of their home to start discussing emergency planning and disaster preparedness. We needed some information to start initiating those conversations that were non-threatening and could guide families to create a good plan that works for them. In all of my experiences with preparedness, both personally and professionally, personal responsibility has always been an important factor between success and the failure of a plan. So it's very important that we gear everybody up in terms of personal responsibility and where they are in terms of readiness. So a good place to start is a self-evaluation, asking yourself where you are in terms of preparedness. If you're very well prepared, that's great. Hopefully I'll offer you a couple of new things in this presentation. If not, that's okay too. Maybe a little bit prepared, you could use a couple of more pointers in how to prepare for, say, the more vulnerable populations that we'll discuss later on in this presentation. Or maybe you don't know much at all about preparedness, and this is really your jump-off point for doing that. You need to ask yourself things like, how long can you and your family survive in your home and car with what you have there now? What if the only resources your family has is what you've put in place for them? How will your family be able to find each other if something happens while you are all at work and school and scattered about the community? Where will you go? Where will you all meet up? Where is the local shelter? What do I do if the power goes out? And what are the local resources that are available to you? And what radio or television station can give you the most appropriate information for your area and neighborhood? Some common reasons for not being prepared, and we all have our reasons. Some people just don't even think about it. It can be expensive to set aside some supplies for your evacuation box or your go kits that we'll discuss later, but a couple of bucks for a couple of cans of food would certainly be worth their weight later. Some people just don't have time. We're hoping to show it doesn't take a lot of time to put just a few things together to be that much more prepared for you and your family. In Connecticut, there's a reason to be prepared in every season, as we've seen recently. Aside from a flooded basement, I've been fortunate enough to not have been adversely affected by any of these events. But there are people still recovering from these events. Certainly, just on the news today, I heard there were people still down in Milford trying to recover from Sandy. So, and certainly, we don't want our loved ones to be a part of a newspaper clipping that has a tragic end. So preparedness is key. And two really good reasons. There's many good reasons, but at the personal and local levels, these two are very good, and they were really the catalyst for this whole presentation. Family preparedness will help you reduce the stress brought on by emergencies and disasters. Consider yourself the emotional barometer in your family. If you're stressed out and unprepared, your family's going to feel that, and they're going to respond in that way. If you're calm and confident, you will keep them calm and confident, and overall that helps the family in its entirety. Just a little something for you to think about. The power goes out in your neighborhood. Everything's dark. What are you going to do? Would you rather know exactly where the flashlight with batteries or candles and matches are in your home? Or not even have a clue where to start looking for them? So be the superhero in your family and prepare your family members to be your sidekick. Number two, I got this from many emergency managers in after event meetings and debriefs and hot washes. Oftentimes the amount of time that they spend answering telephones for simple phone calls or helping people who are, capable of getting someplace, quite honestly, by themselves, it takes away from the people and the incidents and the crises where they are really needed in an emergency. Now, certainly they will prioritize those items, but keep in mind you may be that person that's sick or needs them, and if we help ourselves, we're helping others get to you when you need it. It frees up responders and resources for the critical areas of need. There's a lot of right ways to be prepared. Like I said, having flashlights in your batteries, it sounds simple, but it's huge when you're stuck in a dark room, so just do it. And hopefully we can give you the ideas and suggestions that will help to get you there. These slides will only suggest ideas and considerations. Do what works best for you. Certainly a Rubbermaid box is good for one person, an old duffel bag is good for another, and we'll talk about that more later. So let's get started. Here's the first scenario. Evacuation notices have gone out, and you need to leave your home and you don't know when you're going to be back or what you'll even come home to. What do you take with you? Well, one way to be organized for this is with a go kit. A go kit will have all of the essential items needed to sustain your family for a short period of time and then help in the recovery process after the incident is over. It'll contain personal, specific, and essential supplies for you and your family, and it needs to be ready and accessible at all times. So if you're given the evacuation orders, you know exactly where to go to get that kit and be out the door. Some items for consideration in your go kit. Personal documents, personal ID. I really want to stress on the personal ID for all of the family household members. If you have children that are nonverbal, they're too young yet, and you get separated from them, how are you going to be reunited with that child? How will first responders know who that child belongs to and who they can hand them back over to safely? So I'm put on here a permanent marker with duct tape. Put the child's first name, your contact information, and maybe wrap it around their ankle or put it on their arm. If you don't have duct tape, write it on their arm or the bottom of their foot. In an emergency, do what you can to make every effort of the responders easier to reunite your family. Certainly your emergency family and contacts. What if you are nonverbal? Who should the emergency responders contact for permissions and updates on your status? Emergency cash, coins, and credit cards. Not so much credit cards and ATM cards as cash and coins. If the power's out, ATMs might be a no-go. Banks might be closed, so have an emergency stash of cash and some coins. Car keys and house keys. A list of your current medications and the current medications. Don't leave your medications behind if you're going out the door. Excuse me, I mentioned those in the essentials, along with some water, as much water as you can carry, along with these other items. Food items, light items that have a long shelf life, granola bars, dried fruits, dried cereals, just so that you can keep them in your go kits for some time before having to replenish. Certainly special diets like infants require baby food or breast milk. If you have breast milk in your freezer, you want to grab that and throw that in your go kit on the way out the door, or formulas. Pet foods, if that's an issue, keep in mind your pets during an emergency or disaster. Change of clothes or shoes, and this goes back to my military days. Nothing feels better than a dry pair of socks when you've been wet and soggy all day. So you certainly want to have a change of clothes and a pair of slippers or maybe a pair of tennis shoes you could throw in there for some dry foot gear. And certainly a radio and flashlight with working batteries and a first aid kit if you're comfortable doing that. Back to children. Sometimes children are very sensitive when it comes to these types of disasters, and they will demonstrate their fears through sadness or behavioral problems. Some of them will even revert back to early childhood behavior patterns such as bedwetting, sleep problems, or separation anxiety. Older children might display anger, aggression, school problems, or withdrawal, and distress may also be brought on by televised events. I'm going to go back to my days as a military wife. Desert Storm is going on. All of our guys are over there. Our husbands are over there. We don't know much except that they're dropping Scud missiles our husbands are in the throes of that, so we're watching. And then Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood cuts into regular broadcasting and says, if you have small children at home, turn the television off and go do a puzzle. And that was probably the best piece of advice I got. My stress level immediately came down. I was able to spend time with my children. I was able to calm their nerves. So children are incapable of understanding the impact of these emergencies and disasters. They only need to know enough to answer them honestly, and certainly to meet them at their level of maturity. You don't need to go into a great deal of depth about what's going on at hand or potential consequences of what's going on. Deal in the moment with them, stay calm, and work with them to alleviate their fears. If they're having problems, difficulty expressing themselves, give them a piece of paper, a crayon, and some pen, and let them draw it out. A lot of times that's very therapeutic for children. And certainly hugs and getting back to a normal routine is key in coping, in your child's coping with the situation at hand. If your children are mobile and capable, pack a go kit for them. They can have their own kit. That will give them a sense of empowerment too. And while we're on the subject of vulnerable populations, if you are pregnant, moving on to a shelter, there's some special considerations that you're going to have. If you're pregnant, chances are good you have scheduled prenatal visits. You should keep those, even if it's with a different provider. Grab whatever medical records you have at home, or at least the contact of your current medical provider and phone number so that the new doctor and your old can talk to each other. Be prepared to talk to a new provider about your pregnancy. Take whatever medications you might be on, or prenatal vitamins or supplements. Certainly you want to bring as much bottled water as you can carry, or again, the breast milk if you are a nursing mother. And let the staff know if you are pregnant. If you're in a shelter and they know that there's a pregnant woman on board, there might be resources that they can provide to you that would help alleviate whatever stresses or physical discomfort you might have. Stay away from the disaster site as far away as possible. You don't need to be taking in smoke or fumes or even seeing any of the disaster. Get as much rest as possible, take all your liquids, and try to stay as true to your diet as you possibly can. Other considerations for vulnerable populations are children with special health care needs and the elderly. There may be mobile devices such as wheelchairs, beds, anything to help the first responders get that person who is maybe immobile out of that house and into the shelter. Special diet foods, if you have those, you want to grab some of those. Again, medical records, medications, cardiac medications for the elderly. This is a stressful time for them. Make sure you have that nitro or those patches with you when you go out the door with your elderly. When you're elderly family members, certainly consider the differences in the whole population of your family. Consider a go kit for your car. There's only a few differences between what you would take here and what you would take at home, only because this vehicle may become your home, and you might not be able to see this vehicle. So you want to bring something like a whistle, where you can make a lot of noise in the event you have gone over the side of a ravine, or you're buried in snow. You certainly want to make something that you can make noise with. You want to have your battery charger there for your cell phone. Maybe a dust mask in the event that you are sheltering in place in your car and you need to keep out particulates or toxic fumes. And some blankets in case you're there overnight and you need to bunk down in your car. Just a little safety tip here, sinking car, the pogo, if you can remember pogo. Pop your seatbelt. Pop your child's seatbelt if they're in the back or next to you. Open the window, and you can use something called a center punch. You can actually buy that for your car and leave it in the glove box or the center console. Or you can use your phone or the seatbelt buckle or something hard. And you hit the window. Don't use the windshield. That's tempered glass. It probably won't break. But if you hit the window alongside the door hinge, so whatever side the door hinge is on your particular car, that's where you want to hit the window. That's the most vulnerable area on that glass. So you want to shatter the glass and then get out of the car. And you have to be prepared to take on some water. If your car is going down, once you have your child and you open that window, you're going to get wet. So be prepared for that. Take a deep breath and get up to the surface as soon as possible. Child first. Your child goes first. Hopefully the responders will be right there to scoop you up. Okay, next scenario. A public service announcement requests that your community shelter in place. Well, what is shelter in place, and how can you be prepared for that? Shelter in place is your community emergency manager or even the state has deemed it necessary for you to stay exactly where you are. They might ask you to close the windows and put towels under the doorway or alongside the window jambs to keep out a biological or chemical contaminant. Maybe it's even smoke from a fire. And certainly during epidemics where the hospitals are filled to capacity, which has happened in the United States, not for some time, but it's not, you shouldn't rule it out. If hospital beds are filling and you have a sick one at home, you may need to care for that person at home. So you will need to have food and water there available to them, and you might want to designate a friend or neighbor as the go-between between your home and a pharmacy or the grocery store or your children's school. If you have children at home that are ill and they're too sick for school but they can still do a little homework, maybe that friend or neighbor can bring back some homework and they can stay up on their studies that way. But certainly this is when you want to use your local friends and neighbors as part of your planning. So you want to make sure that you have everything you need in your shelter, if you will. Water, food. You want to keep the water in a cool and dark place. It will keep for about 6 months. So when you get around the 5-month mark, bring that upstairs for immediate use and replenish with a new flat of water. The one extra philosophy, it can get expensive, you know, particularly if you're already living on a budget, to have another food source available. So buy one extra canned good or flat of water when you have a couple of extra bucks. It won't stress out your budget as much. And certainly you want to consider those special diets like baby formula or lactose-free foods or things like that to have on hand. Evaluate your home for potential hazards. It has to be a safe haven. You could end up spending some time there. Certainly, we all hear about smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. According to the Western Journal of Medicine, the good news is that 90% of all American homes have smoke detectors. The bad news is that 25 to 30% of them don't work. So make sure you check your batteries. When we change the clocks, change your batteries. Move your beds away from windows, clear your hallways and exits. This will free up the area for you to get out or firemen to get in. If you don't know how to use the fire extinguisher in your home, take it down to the local fire department and ask them to show you how. Local fire departments are a great resource for fire prevention information, and they can certainly help you with the fire extinguisher, care and use. Flammable or reactive chemicals you should certainly store separate of each other and away from children. And the bottom picture there of this slide is certainly about keeping your babies and younger members of the family safe by putting in the outlet covers and cabinet latches. All of those things are all a part of safety and readiness, preparedness. Okay, now, so we've got our go kits and our emergency supplies, and we've made our home safe. Now what? Now we need to bring it all together into a plan. A good emergency plan will cover a lot of potential threats, and we call this an all hazards plan. A family living in a flood zone who has put together a plan for evacuation and sheltering in place can use that exact same plan for somebody who's been asked to evacuate for a chemical spill, for instance. That's just an example of an all hazards plan. We've already talked about a lot of these items, but certainly your plan should consider your go kit. Where are you going to keep that in your home? Who's going to grab your go kit? Where are the evacuation routes, and how will we be notified to leave our town? What's the best radio station or public broadcasting station that we should be listening to for the most up-to-date and appropriate information for my family? Sheltering in place, is my emergency supply up to speed? Can you put it on a 6-month cycle where mom or dad or Junior or little Sally is going down and bringing up a ticket and saying, you know, the last time we updated this was 6 months ago. We need fresh water, or the batteries are dead. You know, every 6 months or so you need to be checking the supply. And certainly know your local resources. Where is the local shelter? Where's the local food bank? Things like that. It should all be a part of your plan. And a really big deal in emergency planning and preparedness is communication. It's huge. Identify a prearranged meeting site for you and your family. This is when you're put together your fire safety plan, and the house is on fire, or you're doing a drill. Where's everybody going to meet once they leave the house? You certainly want to identify a contact person outside of your geographical area. If they're right next door to you, chances are good they may be affected by the same disaster or emergency situation you are. So you want to name somebody in the next town or a neighboring state, someone close by that knows your family and could be the central contact person in your reunification plan. You also want to have backup forms of communication. I know of families who have walkie-talkies in their shelter-in-place boxes or their go kits. Certainly that duct tape and magic marker I talked about earlier in your go kit, that is a form of communication when you're stuck somewhere and you need to let somebody know that you were there or where you're going, or you want to have some means of communication. Maintain and update your contact numbers and location information. First responders need to know who to contact in the event that you are nonverbal and unable to give them any information. So you want to make sure all of your numbers are up to date. And most importantly, don't keep your emergency plans a secret. Everybody in the family should be a part of the planning. They could have a role in the plan, and they should certainly know about it, particularly in the immediate area of your home. Share your plan with each member of your household, friends, neighbors, and family's primary contact person. Don't forget to let that primary contact person and outside of your geographical area know that they're your primary contact person and what you want them to do in order to bring your family all together so everybody knows everybody else's whereabouts. This was a big deal in Katrina. Children were separated from their family for months at a time because there were no plans in place and the children were too young to be verbal. So be in the know. Know how and when to call 911. This is more for the children in your home. You have to have a discussion with them about what is and is not an appropriate call to 911 when you need police and fire and ambulance and when it's not that emergent. CPR and first aid, I spoke earlier about, my personal interest in knowing more how to handle a situation with that little boy getting hit by a car. I took my first CPR and first aid course, and I've been updating it ever since, and it's just good to know. The fire extinguishers, again, utilize your local fire departments if you're not sure how to use that. Fire extinguishers do have expiration dates too, so you want to check that. You can talk to your local fire experts about expiration dates as well. The water main and the power main in your homes, you have to know how to turn the water off in your house in the event you've got a broken pipe and it's spewing water all over your basement or in your kitchen or in your laundry room. You need to know how to shut that power off. And the power switches as well for your electric and heat. You should also know how to turn those on and off. This becomes very important in terms of generators and powering up homes and just being able to respond appropriately to those types of situations. There's a lot of different cell phones out there. I know my children have cell phones. Before I talk to them, I wouldn't know how to use it. So make sure everybody in your family knows how to use all the cell phones in your home. They're all different. The elderly, in particular, don't have a lot of interest in cell phones. So if you have an elderly person at home, make sure they know how to turn it on and call 911. Basically, it's relatively simple in most phones. But if they don't know how, they could be wasting critical minutes trying to figure that out. Know the locals. Know who your local emergency manager is. They're the ones who make the plans for your town. They're going to know where the evacuation routes are, and they'll know where the evacuation shelters are. You could even take your plan to them and ask them to take a look at it in a lot of towns, and they will look at it and let you know whether or not you've got some critical components that are missing or should be added to in your plan. What is the local emergency plan for evacuation? Where are the routes? How will we get there? Will we be bused? Who will notify us? All of that. You can talk to them about that. Where's your local shelter and food bank? You're asked to evacuate, but you don't know where to go, so you should know that ahead of time. Build that into your plan and update it accordingly. And how will you be notified? Will they be knocking on the door? Will it be through text messaging? I know in my town we get automatic telephone calls and they leave a message, so that's very helpful. Be aware of what to respond to. What is and is not appropriate too. You have to know the valid forms of communication and not just some prankster out there. In some towns, they keep a list of households with members who have special needs, such as oxygen dependency, and they will prioritize that street in terms of getting power back to those vulnerable populations. So talk with your emergency manager and ask if they maintain such a list. And certainly if emergency responders are coming to your home and you have somebody with a chronic or infectious disease, make them aware of it. We need to keep our emergency responders healthy so that they can be there to help us and our neighbors. Now you want to share and test your plan. Your plans are no good if you don't exercise them. And every time you exercise them with a drill or a little event such as these on this slide, you're working out the bugs, and you just make it better every time you use it. So, unplug the phone to do away with communications to see how your family responds to that. Turn the lights off. Do you know where to find that flashlight with those batteries that I talked about earlier? Did everybody in the house know where to go when the lights went out? Do they have flashlights in their rooms that they can use? These are little things you might want to build into your plan. Shut the water main valve off. What are you going to do about backup water? Do your kids know whether or not they can flush the toilet or take a shower? These are the things you need to discuss with your family when you're creating these plans. Trip the fire alarm, did it work? Well, we heard earlier that 25 to 30% of them don't. So make sure you're checking those batteries and testing it from time to time. Did your family know where to meet? Did they go to the place that you designated as the meeting site for your family? And who called 911 and how did they do it? Whose phone did they use? Did they know how to use the phone when they went to call 911? Again, these are all the little bugs that you can work out. And then send a text message to your family to contact the designated person outside of your geographical area. Did they do that? Did they designate Grandma in Massachusetts just to let her know that your whereabouts and where you were going next? That's another way of checking your reunification plan. I'm sorry. This next slide was put together for the home visitors just as a means of guiding them in the topics of discussion for their families and their new moms. I tried to align the months with topics that were kind of already given to them, like October is Fire Prevention Month. That's where I put, check your fire extinguishers, how to use them, whether or not the family even has one in the home. Certainly smoke and fire detectors, and check those batteries. It's so important. March, we're in March, community resource awareness. Again, do your families know where the evacuation shelters are? Is their go kit ready? Do they have a go kit? Do their children have go kits? If their kids are able, do their children know where the go kits are or what a go kart is? Again, that communication. Is the family talking to each other about preparedness? And so on and so forth. Springtime's coming. The Connecticut River the waters will be going up. We had a lot of snow in Vermont and Connecticut, so we're looking at flood season here. So we need to start talking to families about sump pumps. Do they have a working sump pump? Do they know how to turn the power on and off? Those types of things. The emergency planning guides are available. Well, first of all, every new mom in Connecticut gets an emergency planning guide in their rainbow packet when they're in the hospital. So this is a good starting point for families. If you see this in their home already, use this as a guide. I did use that hand in hand with this presentation, so you'll see a lot of things that are the same. I just kind of expanded on everything with this presentation. So use this guide as a means of getting your family started about thinking about preparedness and putting those plans together. And you can order more here from this site. It's at the CTDPH website. So spend some time there. There's a lot of resources in the Public Health Preparedness Office. There's all kinds of resources on the website. So spend a little time at DPH and come up with some good information. These are some other resources. Some of these I used for this presentation. The Red Cross, we all know the Red Cross. They have tons of stuff in children coping with disasters and emergencies, so that you can know how to deal better with your child. And certainly they are a local resource in the event that your home is lost to a fire, flood, or other emergency. www.ready.gov. It's a federal website, tons and tons of stuff, as well as the CDC government preparedness resource. I actually used that to get that slide for the pregnant women. They also had a lot of other vulnerable population information there. So I invite all of you to visit these websites and spend some time there developing your plans, thinking in terms of all hazards, all members of your family, to include pets when you're creating these plans. I'd also like to give a nod to John Best. He's the director of our Office of Preparedness and Response here at the department. He's a continuous resource of information and knowledge here at the department, so thank you, John. And again, I'm Mary Emmerling. I'm a nurse consultant here with the Department of Public Health. Feel free to call me if you have questions about this presentation. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Get planning.